I've been in a position where my cries have gone unheeded. I know how difficult that is. It was the dead of the night, and it was a robbery type of situation. There were a few people around, and they were just too scared to help. And it was just a constant barrage of kicks and punches. And I tried to yell as much as possible, pleading for mercy, to no avail. You know, I realized that after a while I better save my energy and try to save as much energy as I possibly can, because I needed it to survive this ordeal. If I were to survive it, I needed all my... So I stopped screaming, and I just used that energy just to protect myself as much as I can. And screaming in a vacuum, just the helplessness was nothing like I've ever experienced. I'm sure if somebody would have come to my aid, just in even a form of a voice, hey, stop it, or I'll call the police, something like that, maybe they wouldn't have gone to as far as they did. But they left me there thinking I was dead. And I just felt just empty and alone and afraid, you know. And I know the feelings, that the bewildered fear I had in me, the bewilderment, that I wouldn't want anyone that could possibly feel those things to feel it. You know, it's really such a horrible place. And to know that it doesn't take a brain surgeon or an expert ethologist, is that what they call them, animal behaviorists, to know that animals fear, man. They know they're gonna get killed. You know, they know that. And to think that their cries will be unheeded. And they are unheeded 9 billion times a year, for the most part. And but not because of me. You see, that makes a difference. So I just don't want to be a bystander and see somebody get harmed that way, without anybody saying, hey, you know, that's wrong, or that doesn't have to be that way, or hey, stop.
Go on Facebook, not now, but go on Facebook, okay? Go on Facebook and look at the rhetoric. Every time they post, somebody posts something about, people eating dogs in Korea, all the anti-Asian rhetoric. And the answer is, do I think people should eat dogs or cats? The answer is no, of course not. But I don't think that that's any different from eating cows or pigs or chickens. Mm-hmm. So, you have non-vegans, and they're all, you want to talk about insanity. And we're somehow suggesting that the Koreans are morally worse than we are because they eat dogs. That's what we call ethnocentrism, xenophobia, or racism. That's what we call that, okay?
House of slaughter. Slaughterhouse. Do you really think there's such a thing as humane slaughter? Exactly what is your definition of humane? Besides psychological and physical abuse, torture, dismemberment, and murder, what else do you think happens to animals inside of a slaughterhouse? You think they get belly rubs and tushy slaps? And if you think there's such a thing as humane slaughter, I'm curious, do you also think there's such a thing as humane rape? Humane child molestation? Humane slavery? How about a humane Holocaust? In fact, what is your definition of a Holocaust? Is it a massacre of human beings or a massacre of innocent beings?
There will be no future without vegans. The left cannot run a revolution without animal rights activists and without vegans. It is not a revolution to liberate one species on the backs of all other species. Because leftism is just Stalinism towards animals. Leftism is the most radical social paradigm and has the insights that we need to change capitalism, but leftism is in the Paleolithic era in its understanding of animals. And the leftists and the social progressive movements could not be more backwards in their understanding of animal issues, of health and diet, of an ethics of respect, and of the important role that veganism plays for ecology and sustainability.
And it's this idea that the closer they are to us, the more they matter. And that's like saying black people matter more if they have light skin. Okay? And I mean, it's that sort of really, I think, insidious sort of thinking. What makes a human being more superior because the human being can do calculus, a bird can fly with, just fly. I mean, a fish can breathe underwater. I mean, what the hell's the moral value of being able to do calculus? I mean, it's interesting and it's fun, but where do you get that? We see this where humans are concerned. I mean, those characteristics are important because we say they are important. Okay? And so, and if fish ruled the world, they would say, well, being able to breathe underwater, that's morally significant, And so I mean, we're just, it's something we declare. What makes it morally relevant? And the answer is nothing other than our self-interested proclamation. That's the only thing.
This is what I think every non-vegan that eats animals or their products should do, is that they should keep their own animals as pets. And if you want to eat one of your chickens, slaughter your own chicken, kill your own chicken, so that you know where the food came from. It didn't come from an industrialized system where people slitting chickens' necks don't give a shit about anything. You're going to care about your pets. Like, I would never want to kill one of my animals to eat them. Like, never. It wouldn't happen. I'd rather eat grass and live on grass first, right?
If animals matter morally, then the one thing we know we can't do is kill them or make them suffer for no reason whatsoever. You don't even need a theory of animal rights to get there. The bottom line is if your conventional wisdom, what you think is that it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on animals, then if that moral principle means anything, then it must mean that you cannot justify imposing suffering or death on animals for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. And those are the only justifications we have for inflicting suffering and death on 58 billion land animals a year and probably 1 trillion sea animals. They taste good.
The Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. This cruel, disgusting industry will end because we ran out of excuses.
When the law is wrong, the right thing to do is break it. We need to start breaking some damn laws around here. Now, you think I sound radical? I'm only quoting Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King, right? Aren't they our heroes? Don't we admire them? Aren't they the paradigm of how to bring about change? We quote them all the time in words. We never follow their action. If we were to follow Gandhi and King in action, we would have a social resistance movement. We would be in the streets and not in the kitchen.
Animal welfare campaigns are not only not useful, I think they're counterproductive. I think they push things backward because they encourage people to believe that there is a compassionate way, I hate that word, a compassionate way to exploit. And that's wrong. That is just wrong.
Promoting happy exploitation and anything anybody wants to do as a perfect solution to the problem, because they don't want to challenge anybody. I mean, there's a rule basically: never challenge anybody in any way that you're wanting to get a donation from.
The earth can produce enough food for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed.
We are committed as a movement to opposing all forms of discrimination. You cannot say that speciesism is bad because it's like racism, sexism, heterosexism, classism, but we don't have a position on racism, sexism, heterosexism, and classism. We don't have a position on that stuff. We're animal people. And the answer is, sorry, that don't work. If we believe that speciesism is wrong, it's rooted in the idea that all forms of discrimination are wrong.
I say we take the vegan movement that it currently is, I shall call shallow veganism, and we turn it into something we can call deep veganism, which means that we look at the whole picture, which means that we are not isolated from other movements, which means that we educate, but we also agitate, and which means that we become a force to reckon with. Never something to take granted, never something to buy off with markets, never something to make afraid with police, but a true social power, the kind of power that we have latent within us, but have yet to find.
When people say to me, well, people aren't going to go vegan overnight. I know they're not going to go vegan overnight. But it's our obligation to make it clear that if they take animal interests seriously, they have an obligation to go vegan. If they choose to not go vegan, that's their choice. But it should never be something we encourage them to do. We should never be with this, well, you know, I don't want to be judgmental. You can't have a social movement, people. You can't have a social movement. You can have, you know, you can have coffee clutches, and you can have sort of social events and things like that. You cannot have a social movement which is not judgmental. There is no such thing as a non-judgmental social movement. You should never be abusive to people. It's a movement of nonviolence. You shouldn't be abusive to them, but you should make it clear. If somebody comes up to you and says, I'm a slave owner, you don't get violent with that person, you don't attack that person, but you say, I think slavery is wrong. And the same thing with animals. If they matter morally, then we have an obligation to make it clear. This nonsense, we can't be judgmental, we can't do this, if we are judgmental, if we can't comfortably make the judgment that animal exploitation is wrong, we're in the wrong business, people. It's time to sort of like do something else.
We resist. We resist illusion. We resist complacency. We resist co-optation. We resist non-resistance. We need to grow in numbers and diversity. The only way to do that is to work with other social movements who already know the streets.
Animals are not just other species, they are other nations, and we murder them at our peril. Peace is not just the absence of war, it is the presence of justice.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in our nation. We've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition, to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. Not an end, but a beginning. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. There are those who ask, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream.